We begin the current Daf, Mesechta Yevamos Daf Yud. Begin 2 lines Daf at the top of the Yomit, where we're in the middle of a Gemara's discussion from the previous Daf. We know that the Mesechta starts off with the words Chamesh Es Enoshim, 15 women are pointed to Tarasein, and Levi had asked Rebbe, 15, why not 16? And Rebbe said, what are you talking about? What would you think would be number 16? Imay Nusas Aviv. Imay Nusas Aviv is a Machlaikis, and Beplukta Lekimari. That was the point which the Gemara went through a discussion that says, really? We don't talk about Machlaikis? What about that case? What about that case? And the last question was a very complicated question, like we said, which Mitzvah Hampanach B'Ravan, we're going to have a Grace Hasidim, we're going to do the famous Rashi and the Test and the Beis, the Mirz Hashem, Shultei Mitzlachas, and our Seichel is still there. And, but again, the Gemara was just getting to the point to show that there is a case of a Machlaikis, because Reb Chia's Braisa of Hasur Lazeh Muteres Lazeh, when you have two sisters, that to say every case of the Mishnah, including Eishes Achim Shlehi Bailamai, that case is only possible in the Machlaikis, like Rabbi Hidin the Rabbunan. That the Gemara answered. Answer number one, Rebbe doesn't hold that klal. He doesn't hold that you have to be able to apply that case in every case of the Mishnah, and therefore Rebbe does not hold like that. He holds we're only talking about a case of Noyelu B'Sayv Yavam, where even Reb Shim would agree that that would be the Erev of Eish Hashem B'Lamai. Therefore, that was the answer number one. Now Gemara continues to give other answers to that question, but even this just corresponds to Kazakh and the Cheskel to end Daf. Joining with today's Daf. Some of this we discuss in today's Daf are two more answers. Why our Mishnah listed 15 cases, but omitted a 16th case of Iman, this is Oven. The concept of Plukta L'Kamari, that we continue that concept of that we're not talking about case of Machlaikis in our Mishnayos. In Kedushin Teisim Mechiv increases the halacha that when there's a woman that's forbidden based on the punishment of kares, if a person even gives her a ring and says Hareit Mukadeshes Li B'Tabazu, it's not going to be considered kedushin. Kimish Leibana Shula even is the halacha that based on the Jerusalem Pasuk, that once a person doesn't do yibum, he does chalitza, he's not allowed to go ahead and do yibum anymore because it says in the future tense lo yivna, he can't build it anymore. Is the halacha that although there's a mitzvah of yibum by the brother's wife, but that's only like it says in the pasuk Yeshua Achim Yachtav. But when they're not living together, when the brother was only born after his brother passed away, that's considered Eish Achim Shlebalame. Does not have a heter of yibum, and it's just considered the erva of Eish Achim. So like we said in the previous daf, we had mentioned that Levi said to Rebbe, why he's saying 15, say 16, that of Imay Nusas Aviv, which if let's say the father had an out of wedlock relationship, this is of Nusas Aviv, and from that union they had Ruvain, and Shimon married Nusas Aviv, where why can't he marry her? It's not his mother, it's not his father's wife, it's not his stepmother, it's nothing. It's a woman that was violated. So Shimon gets married to Nusas Aviv, and boom, you have Erva number 16. Why don't you say Ruvain, who's the paternal brother, this is his mother? So therefore, why don't you say that as case number 16 as Poitus Torasem, but Torasem, Nachleitz Me'ib? So Rabbi Yanti says, no, Iman Nusas Aviv is a pluk to read Rabbanan. As we had this on Daf Dalit already, we mentioned regarding Leigal Kanaf Ava, we said that Plukto Kamari. Rabban hold on Nusas Aviv is mutter to the man's son. Read on Nusas Aviv is also to the man's son. So that would be dependent on a Machlaikis, therefore we don't mention that as a case. That was answer number one. Answer number two is where our Gemara continues. Daf Yud, 2 lines down at the top of the Yud. Rav Adar Karchina Kamid Rav Kana Oma Mishmei Rabba, he said the name of Rabba. It's not true. Rebbe holds of this rule of Reb Chia, which tells us that you could have two sisters, that although generally when they both fall for Yibum, when you have Reuben, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, that two of the brothers are married to two sisters, when they both die, neither one of the brothers could do Yibum to any one of them because they're both Achayse Kukasis. They're two sisters from two different brothers that are falling, and you can't do Yibum to any one of them because it's almost like a Achayse Ishtai, it's almost like your wife's sister, but Reb Chia had said, when one is an erva to one and one is an erva to the other one, so we say actually hasur lazeh materes lazeh. So actually, then they both actually could do even to the other one. That was the concept. So Rebbe actually holds to that klal. So then the question is back: if he holds that klal, well, number 15 on the list in our Mishnah of Eish Hashem B'Lamei was only in the case of Machlaikis. So why are you saying that we don't mention case of Machlaikis, and that's why you're saying we don't mention Imay and Nusas Aviv? So says the Gemara. No, actually, that's the point. To the contrary, that's why he's not bothered by the question, because we don't say his machlekes v'achamai. This is what he said to Levi. Ima, you're asking me regarding his mother. That is Nusas Aviv that was violated by his father, meaning out of wedlock relationship. He says, that's why we don't say it in the Mishnah. because you cannot have the two criterion of the halacha of Reb Chia, which was 2 points. One is regarding that what's forbidden to one is permitted to the other one, and it has to be that her sister is falling for Yibum at the same time. And you want to have that one will be forbidden for one because of Imai, and then the other one will also be his Imai, but it's permitted to the second one. That's what you would need to have, right? That's the point. We're having two sisters, and you want to tell me that, let's say like this picture shows, let's say you have Yaakov over here, and Yaakov was Ma'anis Rachel, Ma'anis Leah. And from the union of Rachel, they had Levi. From the union with Leah, again, not marriage, out of wedlock relationship, he had Yehuda. Now, if let's say Reuben and Shimon both marry, Reuben marries Rachel, let's say, and Shimon marries Leah. So, because Shimon is from a different wife, he's not from, they all share the same father, but it's not his mother and it's not his mother. So now you're going to say, okay, wait a second, as the lines show that Yehuda, like Levi, would be forbidden to Rachel because that's Imai and this is Av. Yehuda would be forbidden to Leah because that's Imai and this is Av. But Yehuda would be permitted to marry Rachel, and Levi would be permitted to marry Leah. That seemingly is what the case we're trying to illustrate, that even though one is Imai for one is not Imai for the other one. The problem is, you're only going to have, like we said, Reb Chia had mentioned two components. His chap was that even though you have two achayas, you'll have Asur Lazeh and Mutar Lazeh, although generally two sisters is a achayas a kuka, you can't do to either one of them. But I can tell you a case when you could, because one's not going to be zakuk to you. You're not going to have zikah to one. How? She's an erva to you, but not to your brother. And the other one's an erva to him, not to you. So that's all you're going to have, that you'll be able to do yim either one. Problem is, this case of Anusis Aviv, you're only having either that what's forbidden to one is permitted to the other one, or the other variable of it's the sister that's the Yevamot. But you cannot have the halacha by both variables, as the Gemara explains. If Yaakov had a relationship out of wedlock to two sisters, okay, and one gave birth to Levi, and this picture is Rachel, and one gave birth to Yehuda, that's Leah. Now, Reuven marries Anusis Aviv. Again, I'm not going to claim that the pictures, or something in our picture are not exactly to the way the Rashi's words are, so don't get misled if I'm going to say words that are a little bit different. You have to look at the picture at the same time. The Reuven marries Anusis Aviv, the mother of Levi. Right, so that is the same as our picture. Shimon marries Anusis Aviv, the mother of Yehuda, as the picture is illustrating. Now, the problem is, so yeah, you'll have that variable. You'll have that when they're falling in front of Yibum to Levi and Yehuda, it's their sons that they're falling to. You'll have Imai of one and Imai of the other one. Problem is, Hasur Lazeh, Muteres Lazeh Lemishkachas. In that case, you're not going to have that it's permitted to one and forbidden to the other one, because they're both forbidden on both. Why? The mother of Levi is forbidden to him because it's his mother, which was married to Reuven. Her sister, Leah, the mother of Yehuda, would be forbidden to him also because it's Achis Imai. It's his mother's sister. That's it for Yehuda. They're both going to be part from Chalitza from Yibum. So that wouldn't work out if they're both sisters. You wouldn't have Asur Lazeh Muteres Lazeh. One's Imai, but the other one's Achis Imai. And the Ibei's Nachriyas on us. And if let's say this Rachel and Leah were not related, they were not two sisters, random two people that he had violated, these two women, and they both gave birth to two sons, and these women ended up marrying two sons, meaning Reuben and Shimon, from a different wife, from Yaakov, and now they fall in front of the other sons, Levi and Yehuda. Says the Gemara, so you're right. You're going to have that what's permitted to one is forbidden to the other one, because for one it's his mother, for one that's not his mother. But you're not going to have the other variable because they're not sisters. The whole point of Rabbi Chia was a chab. He said, I could show you that although generally when two sisters fall at the same time, although you can't do yibum to any one of them, because it's a chayzik ukasai, but I have a chab. I'll tell you every one of our 15 arayis in our opening Mishnah, that you'll be able to use any one of them to tell me that if one of the brothers, it's his mother, the other one it's, let's take the first kid, a bitoy. That would be Levi's daughter, but not Yehuda's. And the other one will be Yehuda's daughter, not Levi's. Aha! So then he can marry that sister and he can marry that sister because it's not a chayzik ukasai, because there's no zika, because it's an ever to him. And the other one is his, the same case, the same bitoy or bas bitoy. Each one will have one, as we illustrated a little bit yesterday, which we'll go through in more detail all the cases. But you could have one that it's your bitoy, and the other one it's not ever to him, and the other one it's his bitoy, and it's not ever to the other person. Here in this case, they're not sisters, so you're not having a chayzik yevimta. Yeah, you'll have a sur lezem u'teres lezeh, but you're not having the chab of a chayzik ukasai. So the whole point of Reb Chia was to tell you, when you be miyam two sisters, that even though generally a chayzik ukasai you can't do yibum on any one of them. No, I'll be able to show you that you could. For one, it's because it's not zakuk to that one, not zakuk to that one. In this case, you tell me they're not two sisters, and if they are two sisters, then you don't have a sur lezem u'teres lezeh, because one's imay, one's achois imay. So that was answer number 2. Why Rebbe was telling Levi that I can't tell you imay nusas aviv because it's not going to fit the case criterion of these two variables. It wouldn't fit to tell me two sisters that achaisai kishiyivimtoi is going to be a sur lezem u'teres lezeh. That was answer number 2. Answer number 3. Why didn't we say imay nusas aviv as number 16? Rabbi Shloimy says that's not true. In other words, like Rashi explains, don't say that the reason why we didn't say in the Mishnah imay nusas aviv is because, like Rava had answered, that because he doesn't hold that he's klal. No, because meaning Rava's answer, the second answer, that because you're not going to be able to find it, it's not going to work out for like the klal. Because like we just explained, the answer we just gave now, because it's not going to have both criterion. No, because Rebbe doesn't hold to the cloud. That's not the reason why, because it doesn't fit into the cloud. It doesn't hold to the cloud. Don't give me answer number 2 of Rebbe. And also don't say that the reason why we didn't count it was because we're not talking about machlokes, which is answer number 1. Basically, he's saying the first 2 answers, you don't have to say like that. Because of Pluk Kamai, we would say a case of a dispute. So he's knocking out both answers the Gemara just gave. Which first he knocked out answer number 2, and then he knocked out answer number 1. So then, Umay Kumadumali, so why did he tell me? I think it doesn't have any brains in his head. Why is he saying that? Why Taka wouldn't you say then Imay Nusas up? So Hachigamali says, this is what he was telling him. Why don't you analyze the Mishnayos? The Masnit Rabbi Yehuda. Look closely, you'll see that the Mishnah is, who's the town of our Mishnayos? It's Rabbi Yehuda. The Aser Ba'anusas Aviv. He says the son is forbidden in the woman that his father had a relationship out of wedlock. So you're never going to have a case when a mother is falling in front of a son, when he's having yibum from his paternal brother, because his paternal brother is not allowed to marry Anusas Aviv. Forget about telling me that I don't talk about machlekes. Let's say I did talk about machlekes. But who's the Tana that is the Tana in the Mishnah? It's Rabbi Yehuda who holds that it's also Anusas Aviv. So you like learn the Mishnah later on, David Gimel, which is like the sefer of our Mishnah. Mishnah says, although in our Mishnah we spoke about 15 women that are pages, sort of saying, there's 6 arayas chamush meil, there are 6 arayas that are more severe than the 15 we said in our Mishnah. Why? They could only get married to other people, meaning and not to your brother, because they're forbidden even to the brother, and therefore to the same mutaras. Actually, their co-wives are going to be permitted because it's like a shlei b'makom mitzvah. It's not never married to your brother. Their co-wives are always going to be permitted. What are those 6? So the list begins: Imai, his mother; Veishas Aviv, his father's wife, and meaning his stepmother; Vachais Aviv, and his father's sister, etc. Now the question is, my Imai. What is the case when it says the erva is his mother? Elim in the Sus Aviv, if it means say his mother, like most people's mothers are the woman that is married to his father, that can't be. Haina Eishas Aviv, that's his father's wife. I wouldn't have to say twice Imai Eishas Aviv. Elalav, rather, what does it mean mother? That's not his father's wife. What's the mother that's not his father's wife? It's Anusas Aviv, the woman that was out of wedlock. Ukutani, and what does the Mishnah say why they're so severe? Because they can only get married to other people, and what? Meaning they can never be married to your brother. That's why they're so severe. They're never going to exempt their tsar, because the tsar is only exempted mocha mitzvah. Mocha mitzvah only when it's coming from your paternal brother. These women can never be married even to your brother. So therefore it's not going to have the halacha of patring a tsar. Says the Gemara, Man Shamat, who's the Tana of the Mishnah, which is the Seif on Daf Gimel. This Lehasra who holds to this logic that your brother cannot marry Imoy Anusas Aviv. That's Rabbi Yehuda. The Asav Anusas Aviv, he says forbidden. Misham Hachi Leitanile. That's why the Mishnah doesn't say it, because we're going like Rabbi Yehuda. He's the Tana of Mishnahs. And you cannot have such a case because the brother is forbidden to marry him. He wouldn't have been married to her to fall for the son, and therefore the case doesn't start. Now, however, the Gemara asks, Amalei Ravina Ravashi. He says, why are you saying this? He says that Rabbi Yehuda Nami Mishkachas. That's not true. You could have the case according to Rabbi Yehuda. The Avar Vanasiv, if the brother violates halacha and he marries the woman that his father had violated, and now she falls for yibum in front of the son, so we should go ahead and say such a case, because this is not a chiv shesh bekaras. So we're saying that it's something, although it's a negative prohibition, but the marriage would take effect. So why did you say it as a possible hypothetical case, even though it's someone doing an affair? It says, you want to know, we don't say case in the Mishnah of if. If a guy does an avera, then what's going to happen is there's erva of even there's something going to fall. We don't say case like that. But however, only Ravashi himself, who is the one who is saying this interpretation, he asked Rav Kahn, he says, wait a second, I have a difficulty with my pshat. Even without this and if, meaning even if the one who died didn't do any avera with the marriage, Nami Meshkachas, it's not true, you could find this case. How so? He says, I'll tell you the following case. Yaakov, on this kalasai. Yaakov goes ahead and he violates his daughter-in-law, obviously against halacha, where he's not allowed to have an intimate relationship with his daughter-in-law. But he goes and he rapes his daughter-in-law. And now from that union, they have a son, Umeis Reuven. Now Reuven is Yaakov's son, who is married to this daughter-in-law. The son dies, Reuven, who is the husband, without any children. Now, this woman, this daughter-in-law, let's call her Dina, she's falling in front of her son, Shimon, who is her husband's brother, because he's the son of Yaakov, and they're paternal brothers. Now, Umigadi Asira, now since she is forbidden to Shimon, so it's Rasa Nami Asira. So the Kohev should also be Asir. Meaning that's a case of Imai Anusas Aviv. This Shimon was born from Dina, who was violated by Yaakov, the father-in-law, giving birth to Shimon, who's also Reuven's paternal brother. And this is not a case of any. No one did anything wrong. No, the Nisuin of Reuven was no Isser, not the Reuven was allowed to be married to her, but it turns out that his wife is also Anusas Aviv it's Imai of Shimon. So but no one did Avera. Reuven, in the previous case, we always thought, it has to be an Avera, obviously, because how's he marrying Anusas Aviv? No, this happened beforehand. They were already married before this happened. This deviant story happened during the marriage. The father-in-law went and had a relationship and then gave birth to Shimon. Now Shimon, and Reuven had a mutter-diga marriage, and he doesn't have any children. Shimon now can't do Yibam because it's his mother. Even though Yibam would apply to Shimon because he's the brother of Reuven.
Shimon was born to Rachel or
to his Dina, let's say. Yaakov, his father, violated his brother's wife.
So the brother's wife is not Shimon's mother.
What?
So the brother's wife
is his mother. He was born from that union. Shimon was born.
So he's a paternal and maternal brother?
He's only a paternal brother.
So he's not born to his...
But it's his mother. The Yevama is his mother.
You just said she did not give birth to him.
No, Dina gave birth to Shimon.
Dina is another woman.
No, let's say I was saying that's the wife. That was the Kalosai.
Oh, Dina is the Kalosai.
There's only one woman in this picture.
Oh.
There's Yaakov.
So she gave birth. She married Reuven and she gave birth to Shimon.
How did she give birth to Shimon? From Yaakov, her father-in-law.
Right.
And therefore, he's a paternal brother. At the same time, it's his mother. So here is no DE. There's no Avera done over here. Says the Gemara still. I still don't like it, says the Gemara. Because Amalei says, we're talking about permitted brotherhood. We're not talking about a prohibited brotherhood. Meaning, if they're brothers through an Isser, we're also not talking about that. Meaning, it's not a case of an Isser in the marriage, but how was he born through an Isser? That was what we're not talking about. Right, technically it would be another Erva, but we're not mentioning a case like that either. Now, it says the Gemara, even so, that Rebbe had answered to Levi that I think he doesn't have any brains in his head, as we had started this discussion in the previous stuff, still Batka Levi b'masnitin. Levi still edited and added on in his Mishnayos. Levi had his own corpus of Mishnayos. He added on the 16th case of Ima Nusas Avav. The time Levi, like Levi learned, he taught Ima, your mother, so sometimes she'll exempt her co-wife. Sometimes she's not going to exempt her co-wife. Kids also. So, if this was his mother, who was his father's wife, and then and then she married this her son's paternal brother and died, meaning the husband died. So this is going to be his mother that will not exempt her co-wife, because as Rashi explains, the condition was never typhus when in the husband who died without any children, because it was Ashes Aviv, it was his father's wife, which is a punishment of Karas. And the Gemara tells us later on at the end of Amid Beis that condition is not typhus b'chiv kris according to everyone. So when this Rasha passed away without any children, she's not falling for Yibam in front of her son, because it's not even Ashes Ach, it was never his wife. Although he gave her a ring and everything that does, it's not taking effect because it's a chiv of karas, and therefore it's not going to exempt her tzara, because again, the exemption of tzara is only b'malka mitzvah when it's his brother's wife and co-wife. It wasn't his brother's wife. He was never married to her, because if it was imay nesuasam, and therefore we wouldn't mention that in the list of 15. But as Getindim and Beis, this is what Levi said. But if it was his mother that was violated by his father, and then she married his paternal brother, and then his paternal brother passed away, but Kedushin is typhus. Because as Rashi explains, even according to Yehuda says that really the brother is forbidden to marry, and this is Aviv, but Kedushin is typhus b'chiv alavin. It's only negative prohibition. There's no chorus to marry the Anus is Aviv, even according to Yehuda. So when the brother dies, it comes out that the tzara is a tzaras erva. So says Levi, yet that would be number 16. That is erva that would exempt her co-wife. And the Aviv b'Shoshana Chacham b'Mishtazin, although our sages in the Mishnah only Chamesh as a list of 15, says Levi yesh lanu lo'isav sheish esrei could go into. We could add on the 16th one like this, which is imay anusas Aviv.
Shimon is also a mamzer.
Yeah.
He's a mamzer, so we can't marry. Happens to say a mamzer.
Oh no, right. It would depend on the mamzer is.
Before he got married.
Oh, mamzer is.
She was married to Reuben.
As a mom,
She's an Eshes Ish.
kind of loud stuff.
Right, so that's what I'm saying. He would Yibum, whatever, yeah. Or we would have to have chalitza. We'll see throughout the Masechta exactly what type of cases that would be. But there's still a mitzvah of Yibum, right? So Amalei Rish Lakish Rabbi Yechon.
Mitzvah Yibum is also the mamzer.
We'll see. We'll see. Yeah, and I'm saying. So he's saying that this Shimon is right. We'll see exactly. Yeah. So Rish Lakish says Rabbi Yechon, the Levi Damed D'i, Namikatani, he asked the following question. According to at least one pshat, Levi was talking about even cases, because again, our Mishnah that we said is Rabbi Yehuda, we had said from Daf Yomi, you see our time of Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda, and he said Anus Zav is forbidden, and still Levi attached in his text of Mishnayos of Imay Anus Aviv. So obviously it has to be D'i, meaning that you're doing something wrong. The brother who was married to Imay Anus Aviv, there was a negative prohibition, and he's still married, and Levi's still mentioning it as Mishnayos. So therefore, Shlokish asked Rabbi Yechon, according to Levi, that he says the that he's talking about cases of the way it's only viable. The case is if someone did an averum. So listening, I can tell you another case then that you could have said in the arayos that are pointed to us saying. What would the case be? So this opens up a whole new sugya going into the next daf. Hachaylis liyavimter. Someone does chalitza to his yevamo, which chalitza is basically like the get, and like it's like sending her away. We're not doing gibur. Then the chaz v'kidsha. Then he goes back and he does kedushin. Like a change of heart. It's like, what do I do? She's such a good woman. Yeah, let's do kedushin. Now the kedushin is typhus because, and we'll see this throughout this daf, that there's only a negative prohibition for this yavam now to marry this yavama, which is based on the pasuk Hashem lo yibnes beis achar, that what's called kibbutz leibana. Once he didn't build it, he didn't because he did chalitza. So Allah has shuv leibana. He's not allowed to build it anymore. So you're not allowed to do yibum. You're not allowed to get married. But that's only a negative prohibition. And kedushin is taifis. It would take effect in something that's only negative prohibition. You don't have any more the chiv karas of eishasach. That's obviously part of the lamdas of this whole masechta that you don't have that anymore. But what happens in meis b'leibana? Let's say he dies without any children and he has another wife. So why did you say since his chalutza that he ended up marrying is forbidden to the brothers? It's a little bit of a cheshbon, but like Rashi explains, the brothers actually, interestingly, have a punishment of karis on the chalutza according to Rish Lakish, who he says later on in the sugya that the brothers of the one who does chalitza are chayav on the chalutza karis, as we'll explain shortly why that would be, because they actually never lost the Isser Eishas Ach Sheish Bekaris. So you could say another case. Here it's a De'i. He's doing something wrong, obviously. He's marrying the Chalutza, but Chalutza condition would be Tev, it's only Chiv Alavin. And then, however, the brothers, for them it's an erva of Karis. So since she's forbidden, Tzaras Nami Asir, the Tzara should also be forbidden, as it is for any Chiv Krisis. So why didn't you say that as another case in number 17 in our Mishnah? Levi's adding on the ease. So say not only 16 of Yevamos, say 17 of Chalutza that he was Chaz of a Kidsha. So Amalei, so on that, Rabbi Yechon's answer to Rish Lakish says, yes, a good question, but I have a technical reason why it can't be another case of our Mishnah. It cannot be tzara. Meaning our Mishnah said that if, let's say, the tzara goes and marries another one of the brothers, so that then that tzara is tzara, and that tzara is tzara, and so on and so on, going brother, they're all going to be forbidden. Here you can't say that, because this chalutza that was chaz of a kidsha is forbidden to all the brothers, because all the rayas of our Mishnah, she's only ever to one of them. Let's say bitoi or bas bitoi, whatever it is, but all the other brothers permitted. So you could say that tzara going to one brother, then to another brother, and so on and so forth. But here, the chalutza is a chiv karas to all the brothers. So it wouldn't be taifis to say that then she goes and the tzara goes marries another one, because it's not tzara, it's an automatic erva to everyone directly. But then the Gemara says, but B'leimale, why didn't Rabbi Yechon say to Rish Lakish a different answer? Chiv alavani. Why are you saying that it's a chiv of karas? Why doesn't he say that it's a negative prohibition for the brothers on this chalutza, which goes and then falls in front of them, and therefore it's actually not even karas to be an erva to exempt it tzara in the first place? Because he himself disagrees with Rish Lakish, as I'm going to shortly quote, and he says whether it's the chaylitz or even the other brothers, they're not chayv on the chalutza karas, and they're not even chayv either on the tzara karas. So why is Rabbi Yochanan giving this whole answer saying, oh, you're right, really, Rish Lakish, I agree to you, it could have been number 17, but technically it can't be, because you won't have the case in the Mishnah of going to the tzara and so on and so forth, because it's everyone's erva. So you can't, everyone has equally, you can't go to another brother who it is permitted for to create another, and so on and so forth, because the tzara's erva is just like an erva herself, and no one could go and marry another one. Why are you saying that? Say the reason why it couldn't be number 17 is because it's actually not an erva. There's no chiv karas on the brothers, because Rabbi Yochanan disagrees with Rish Lakish, and he holds that actually it's only chiv alavin. Chiv alavin in other words, when you have a negative prohibition, there's a zikah for yibum. There's no isser of a law that's going to exempt you from chalitza, because we learn that from Achais Isha, as we taught in the beginning of this Daf Gimel Beis, that she's an erva and there's a chiv when you do deliberately karas. Here, when you do deliberately, it's not going to be karas, only a negative prohibition. Therefore, that's why you couldn't say it in the Mishnah. Why are you saying because you want to tzara? Say very simply, it's not an erva. It's no chiv karas. It's only a lot. The brothers, just like the chaylitz, only have a negative prohibition. Says the Gemara, you're right, but he was only going according to the words of Rish Lakish. Meaning, Rabbi Yochanan really was saying to him, according to me, the chalutza that was chaz of a kidsha, to the brothers, is just a negative prohibition. And what do I mean? They are in the category of yibn chalitza, and it wouldn't pater the tzara from a halach of erva. But he was saying, according to you, Rish Lakish, the chiv increases that you hold it for the brothers, the chalutza would be a punishment of kares. And even so, I can tell you why we didn't say that case of taking back the chalutza as case number 17, because it's not applicable for the case of tzara. But you're right, according to Rabbi Yochanan, he didn't have to go there. But now, the Gemara goes back now to explain, to source this machlekes that we referenced in the previous Gemara's discussion. I'm explaining the actual machlekes. Says the Gemara, if someone does this, whereas the picture is illustrating you have Reuben, Shimon, and Levi, and you have that Shimon dies, and Shimon had two wives, Rachel and Leah, and Reuben goes ahead and he does chalitza to Rachel. Then he has a change of heart, because of a kitcha, goes back and he marries her. So, and Amr Shlakish, so Shlakish says like this, says, this Reuben, ein chayav al chalutza kares, actually not chayav for this Rachel that he ends up marrying, he's not chayav kares for that marriage. But va'achin, this Levi actually, chayav al chalutza kares, he actually would be chayav on this Rachel chayav of kares. That's one part. Shlakish continues, says, now al atzar, what's with Leah? If let's say there was a co-wife, which obviously she was exempt from Yibum with the chalitza that Reuben initially did with Rachel, because it says in the Torah, Beis Chalutza No, which is in the singular, Beis is singular, which only one bias do you have to chalitza on, you don't have to do chalitza to both wives. Now, that Sarah, what's the halach? It's actually more severe than Rachel, because Bein Hu Bein Achim, whether Reuben or the brother Levi, Chayav and Al Tzara, they're both going to be chayav on the co-wife, a punishment of kares. Why? It remains with the Isser Eish Zachla kares, which they took away when the Yibum was taken away. So you always have an Eish Zach. Eish Zach has a punishment of kares. Only Yibum lets you. When you do Chalitza the Rachel, so that retains the original kares of Eish Zach. So it's basically like an Eish Zach Sheish Labanim, which is going to be a Chiv of kares. Because, as we're going to explain, only in Rachel did we take away the chiyuv because you were doing some type of yibum chalitza on her. So that's obviously she's not eish akshish like kares. But then when you do chalitza, then it's a negative prohibition of shuvla yivna. But Leah, you never did anything with her. So the moment you take away the zika of yibum, she remains with the original eish zach, sheish like kares.
You can pick either one. You can pick either one.
But once you do, then the other one is the kares. Now Rabbi Yochanan, he said he disagrees. He says that no, Beinu Bein Achim, whether him or the brothers, in a chayav, and they're not going to be liable. Loyal chalutza kares, not on the chalutza kares, but on the tsar kares, and not on the tsar kares, which is what we referenced before. Says the Gemara. The Gemara explains the opinions. My time, what's the reason the Shlakish? So I'm going to the pasuk says like this. Pasuk says in the Varim that the Yevamos is going to come to the eyes of the elders, and she's going to take off his shoe from his foot, and she's going to spit in front of him, and she's going to say, Kacha Yoslish. Right, we're going to say these words tonight. But here it's different words. It's Asher Yivne is based Achim. That's not going to build his brother's house. So the words Asher Yivne is not going to build is future. Why is saying that's not going to build? Saying that he didn't. No, it's telling us the following teaching. Once he didn't build because he's doing Chalitza now, Shuv Lo Yivne, he's not allowed to go and build it anymore. Oh, so wait a second. He only has a negative prohibition of Lo Yivne, which is just a negative prohibition. The brothers, they remain as they are with the Isra Eish Zach. Moreover, it's only on this woman herself that he's doing chalitza with that she has the leivna. Hatzava, the co-wife, you're not doing, there's no leivna. He was not loibana on her to be leivna. You remain with the original Isra of the Eish Zach, which has a bunch of cars. So it's only the chaylitz with the chalutza that interestingly gets downgraded from a karas to that of only a negative prohibition of leivna. So it's only him and the chalutza that has a chiv alav. But for the brothers, would be considered a chiv of karas as an erva. That's why our previous Gemara's discussion had asked, that could be another case of an erva pattering the tzaras, because she's actually erva as karas. Rabbi Yochanan, however, he would tell you, no. Mika midi, do you think there's such a thing? Dimikava, originally, if he wanted to, this brother, he could have done chalitza. Viboy and if this brother wanted to do chalitza, he could have done chalitza. Meaning anyone is allowed to do chalitza. And the same thing goes for the co-wife also. Originally, Vibay, if he wanted to lahai chalitza, he could have done chalitza to this woman. Vibay, if he wanted to lahai chalitza, he could have done chalitza to this woman. Now, for Hashta, now, because one of the brothers did to one of the women, Koy Alebakars, that's going to make now for all the brothers, on including for everyone on the tzara, it's going to be cars? How can you say that? What's the difference? Everyone had the same heterim, Ella rather, Iush Lichusa de Achim Kavod. This Reuven, he is an agent for all the brothers. He's just representing everybody. Because originally everyone was able to do the same thing. And so this Rachel, this Chalutza, that she's doing the agency of the co-wife. Because everyone it could have been done with. So therefore, essentially what Rabbi Yochanan is saying, that since just like you agree the Chalutz on the Chalutza is Lo Yivna, so too is it on the Tsar Lo Yivna, and so too is the brother on both of them, that it's only going to be a negative prohibition of Lo Yivna. That's the woman and the men are representing all the men and all the women for this transaction, and therefore everyone's going to have the same negative prohibition and not have a punishment of cars. The Gemara continues that Eisvei Rabbi Yochanan Shlakish. Rabbi Yochanan asked Shlakish from the following brisa. Brisa says that Hachilitz Levinte. Someone does chalitza to his Yevamos. V'chazer b'kidsha, and then he goes ahead and he does kedushin, v'meis, and he passes away. So the halacha is tzricha chalitza min ha'achil. The brothers have to do chalitza on this widow, who again he had married after he had done chalitza to her. Says Rabbi Yochanan as follows. Says Bishlam, it makes sense according to me, that meaning that I said that this chalutza, what's her status? That we said her status is on all the brothers is only a negative prohibition. So that's why you need to have chalitza on the brothers, as we'll learn later on this Masechta, that when there's only a negative prohibition, not that of an erva of karas, that you don't pater, you don't exempt totally from yibum. You can't do yibum because obviously it's negative prohibition, but you have to do chalitza. So it makes sense that you're saying you have to do chalitza. Daily Daf, but according to you, I might say chalitza. Why do you need chalitza? Because although you're right, the kedushin was typhus of the first husband who did chalitza to her, because for sure there's no chorus on him, but when he dies, that should exempt and go out from the brothers because of erva, because you hold that it's a chorus on them. So why would you require chalitza when there's an erva of chorus? It doesn't require a chalitza. Says Rish Lakish back, according to your reasoning, aim a seifa. Oh, then let's see the seifa. The seifa says, Amad echem en ha'achem bekitcha. If let's say the Chaylitz did not do kedushin, rather one of the other brothers got up after Reuben did, as this picture illustrates, after Reuben had done chalitza, not that Reuben went and married the chalutza, but rather one of the brothers went and married the chalutza. Says the brisa, ein lo love klum. So then there's no relationship whatsoever. Says Rish Lakish back to Rabbi Yochanan. But if you hold that the relation that Levi has with Rachel is only negative prohibition, why is there no relationship at all? Because you're trying to tell me that as if Kedushin is not typhus and that she doesn't need to get from him, but Kedushin is only not typhus b'chiva krisis. That makes sense to me, but you say that it's a chiva lav. So why wouldn't there be any relationship over there? So Rav Shesha says that it's not difficult according to Rabbi Yochanan. He says you could say that both the Reish and the Seif is like Rabbi Yochanan. But Seifa asan Rabbi Kiva. The Seif is going like Rabbi Kiva, and the Reish would be like the Rabbanan. And what does Rabbi Kiva hold? The Amay says in Kedushin Tevs and Mechiva Lavin. He says Kedushin does not take effect in negative prohibitions. So therefore, yes, if the brother goes ahead and does a Kedushin, Ein Ladav Klum, is because it's a Chiva Lav. Chiva Lavin doesn't take effect. But the Reish like the Rabbanan, because it is a Chiva Lav. And therefore, it would require Chalitza if Reuben goes back and remarries her after Chalitza. But this still makes sense, because it's going like a Bekiva, the Kedushin is not Taifas. But then says the Gemara, but listening then, why don't you say Ladivri Bekiva and Lav Klum? You tell me the same is like a Bekiva, what you should say, and explicit, say only according to Bekiva there's nothing there. But according to Rabbanan, that we always hold that Chiva Lav and Kedushin is Taifas, then something would be effect. So this is the Gemara on the top of Yerav and Av Kasha, that definitely is a difficult, according to Rav Sheshes, that who answered like this, why didn't we say this idea of that it should be going like according to Bekiva? Now, the Gemara continues and says that this was one answer that we gave, was for that of, to explain how the Reish and the Seifa is like, both like Rabbi Yochanan. The Gemara gives two more answers to explain this, because it is a little difficult according to Rav Shesha says it. This is a little bit complex, but it just because it introduces some other variable. Rav Ashi some like Rish Lakish. Rav Ashi actually held like Rish Lakish. Did he explain that, as we said, that all the other brothers on the chalutza is karas? So as we said, the seifa makes sense, because the seifa was that we said that ein lelav klum, because of course a chiv of karas. So that makes sense. But the difficulty was the reisha, So Mataratzla, he explains the ratio of the price that says that the brothers have to do chalitza. That was difficult. He said, why do they have to do chalitza? It's an erva of karas to them. Oh, it's talking about brothers that were born after the chalitza and the kedushin of the second one, which is Kereb Shimon. If you recall, he says, by Yibam L'Sayf Noilet. Let's say there was a brother who died without any children. One of the other brothers already did Yibam. And then a third brother was born. So then he says the nefila from the first brother is not effective in making it on Levi, Eishes actually by Lamai, because he wasn't around at that time. So that woman would not be such an erva. So therefore that Zika does not make it forbidden on him as a punishment of cars. And the reason is because when he was born, she was already engaged. As we're going to explain in a moment. So how do you explain this exact case? And Ravina saw like Rabbi Yechanan. Ravina holds like Rabbi Yechanan that says, no, the brothers is only Chiva Lavan. So actually the Reisha makes sense why you would need Chalitza, because it's only a negative prohibition on the brothers. So it makes sense why when Reuben goes and remarries the Chalitza that he did Chalitza to, Levi would have to do Chalitza, because it's only negative prohibition, it's not Chiva Krisis. But the problem was, what do you do with the Seifa? When Mataratzi explains the Seifa that says that when the brother Levi goes and does Kedushin, we said Ein Lav Klum, which we said that's difficult. Why Ein Lav Klum? It's only negative prohibition. Because it's talking about brothers that were born at a later point in time. But it's going K'Rabbanan, who they disagree with Rabbi Shimon. And they say Eishes Achav Shlei Ba'Lamai is even if he was born afterwards, like an erva. And therefore, there's no contradiction in the ratio of Sefer, as the Gemara explains that. Gemara says, Rav Ashi Sabala Krish Lakish, like we said, he holds a Krish Lakish, which was made sense for the halacha of the Sefer, who holds that it's like Chayiv Karas on the brothers. And therefore, if one of the other brothers does Kedushin to the Chalutza, in Lav Klum, the problem was with the ratio, why would they have to do Chalitza then when, let's say, the Chalitz remarried her? Because the Matas like Reb Shimon explains like Reb Shimon. What's Reb Shimon? The ratio is saying like this. If someone does Chalitza to Yevamos, and then he goes and gets engaged to the woman that he did Chalitza to, so we said in the Brisa that she requires Chalitza from the brothers. We got a difficulty. Why would she require Chalitza? It's an erva. Oh, man Achem, who's the brothers that we're talking about? Achem HaYeludim. Brothers that were born after this Reuben did Kedushin to his Chalutza. So they were never forbidden with the Chalitza, because that first Zika did not apply to them, because they weren't around at that time. And that's the same reason why it's not Eish Tzacham Shlei Bei Lamai, even though he's born after that his first brother had died, because he wasn't around then. And that's not forbidden. Come on, who's that like? Kereb Shimon. That he says, Noilet Shari is permitted. So here also, Tais explains that why can't he even do Yibam? Why do you need Chalitza? Because Lamai says it's forbidden to the husband. So if it's B'mutula Asura, so B'shul B'asula. But at least you need to have Chalitza, because that first Zika to make our Chalitza doesn't apply to that brother. He wasn't around at that time. Just like we don't say Yishlach Shlei B'Lama is a problem. That's answer number. That's how we explain the Reisha. But the Seifa is told about Amad Echad Min Haneiladim. If one of the brothers that were born, that were there by the first Chalitza, the kitchen, he does Kedushin, Ein Lav Klum, then you're right, nothing's going to take effect. Come on, who's that like Keresh Lakish? That says, yeah, the brothers are Chayav Nechalutza, Karis, because he was around. So these brothers in the Reisha of the Seifa are different brothers. The Reisha somebody was born later, and somebody who was already born. That's one approach. Then Ravina, some like Rabbi Yechanan, he holds like Rabbi Yechanan, he explains according to Rabbanan. How so? So the Reisha was what made sense. There's someone that does Chalitza to Yevamos Daf, and he goes, the same guy, and gets married to her. Yeah, you need Chalitza from the brothers. Man Achan, who's that? Achan Haneladim. That's the brothers that were already born. Come on, who's that like Rabbi Yechanan, who he says that it's only Chiv Alavan. So therefore you need to have Chalitza. What's the case of the Seifa? And this is the last part. If let's say one of the brothers who were born after Chalitza, or even after the Kedushin, and then the one that did Chalitza dies, if let's say one of these Yulaydim goes ahead and Vikitcha, and he goes and marries that woman, Ein Alav Klum. There's no relationship whatsoever. Not because of the Chalitza, because based on Chalitza, but the fact that she was Chalitza, Rabbi Yechanan would hold that Kedushin would be typhus. You know why Ein Alav Klum? It's because it's Eishes Ach Shlai Bar Lamai from the first Nefila. Kamanu Dalai, Kirabana, that they say that even if it's Yibum Zayim Noilad, it's going to be forbidden because of, not of Chalutza, because of Ish is actually Ba'alama, because he was later born. So essentially, they both explain for B'yichan or Shlakish how to resolve the contradictory ratio of Seifa for them, like other Tanoim in the halach of Ish's Ach, Shlahaya Ba'ilamai, where depending if you hold that it's going to be mutter if Yibum Zayim Noilad, or if you go like the Rabban who hold that even then it's going to be Asr. That's how you end up explaining the contradictory ratio of Seifa for B'yichan or Shlakish in this halacha. But again, that's two other ways how to resolve this brisa that seems to be contradictory, that it would be work out for either Rabbi Yochanan or Shlomo. Anytime.